Good gravy, no ring light, and a whole lot of rantiness. And let me get my list. Does that tell you what's going on here? Okay, if you don't know who I am, I'm Suzanne Titkemeyer. I wrote for Pathos for almost 10 years about Quiverful, about these exact kind of things. I'm moving to the way of sunlight. I don't have my ring light on, but I got sunlight pouring in here like crazy. I'm dressed for cleaning in an old t-shirt from NaNoWriMo 2014, which I finished that year, and I don't always. I don't do NaNoWriMo anymore because I had a, hey nitwit, I had a troll ruin it for me. Somebody I knew that was a bad writer that did a whole lot of plagiarizing, uploaded 5,000 words a day exactly, and just made a mockery of the whole thing. Hey, hey Tanya. Yeah, thank you. I'm getting ready to clean at least a little bit if I can get past my allergies. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about, well, first of all, let me say, do all the YouTubey things, hit subscribe, like, dislike, whatever. I would appreciate that. And please do not harass, beat up on, tickle, mud wrestle anybody I'm talking about here, because, hey, Jan, hey, Always Grateful. Good morning. It's been a crazy morning here. I'm just going to tell you. Yesterday, after I got off of, hey, Christoph Ann, yesterday after I got off of here and saw that there was news on Jana Duggar neglecting one of the children she was supposedly watching. I saw that quickly, but I wasn't entirely surprised because the day before, or maybe it was the day before that, it was either Wednesday or Thursday, a Duggar rumor had come down saying that somebody in Duggartown had been cited and or arrested for falling asleep while they were watching small Duggar children, and the children had gone out on the road, and somebody had seen them, called CPS, called the police, who called CPS, and there was an open file on this. To find out it was Jana was the only really surprising thing for me. I had a feeling it was one of them lesser Duggar wives. I'm just going to say that. But hey, Laura S. Hey, Kira. But it plays into what I want to talk about today. Duggar rumors. Duggar rumors. That's one thing that you can count on when there's Duggars. Like I said, when I worked for NLQ, I didn't write about the Duggars as often as I could have, even though they bring big hits, because of the fact that you're really, the Duggars are problematic. The rumors are. Every day there was a new set of rumors, new crazy things were said, and you learned not to say anything unless you were pretty sure your source was accurate and you could confirm it with at least one or two other sources. And I remember back when Homeland Security raided Josh's car lot. There were a lot of rumors flying that little short time frame. I had people sending me photos that showed Homeland Security and various law enforcement on the compound and various things. And I just sat back and waited. I knew something was going on, but exactly what it was, I was not about to write about it in too much detail beyond to say there are rumors, because I didn't want to say, hey, XYZ has happened without knowing for sure. Hey, Kathleen. So this Jana Duggar thing was and was not surprising. KJ understands contacting Jed's friends too. Kara, I saw that. That's like the height of tacky as far as I'm concerned. I saw that and I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. So I want to debunk some of the things about KJ, because lately I've been seeing her using stuff from not just Fundie Snark Reddit, uncensored Fundie Snark, and Free Jinger and other places that are not always the most accurate. KJ says she broke the news and publicized. She's mad at TMZ for not giving her credit. I saw that and I laughed, because you know who actually did break the news and who it was? The British tabloids. They will break a lot of these news. And I got to shout out to them. During the trial, I was watching the Sun's live minute-to-minute coverage. It was really one of the best ways to go about doing that, to know exactly what was going on. We got to talk about rumors and how these things happen and what kind of, this is driving me crazy. I'm not used to wearing a bra with this thing. How these things come about. Hey, Prairie, KJ did not break that rumor. That was the British tabloids. I forgot whether it was the Guardian or the Sun. I saw it in first. But I saw it in them before she ever took to her live stream to announce that Jana had been arrested and had been released on bail and had apparently not been watching a pile of Duggar kids or a Duggar kid. I'm not sure right now how many kids. It looked like the charges were just for one child. The rumor I heard, which I never publicized 2 days before, was that it was a pile of kids. It wasn't just one, it was a pile of them out in the street. KJ is such a clout chaser. Oh, she beyond is. It was in September, Kira. It was in September. So this is not a recent thing. Not a recent thing at all. Hey, Hermes, Mom. So I started looking through Reddit and various places yesterday. And WOACB Reddit has a lot of inaccuracies. So I've decided, September 9th, I've decided I'm just going to do ask me any question you want about KJ. And if I have an answer, I will give it to you. I just want to talk about some of the rumors that people are saying about KJ. This came about because this morning I read one and I was just like, oh no. If we have all this inaccurate information, it negatively affects our community. It's just like this whole thing with Nat, and I'm convinced was put there to distract us all from what was really going on. If these false things are allowed to stand, and people, did she make it out to be more recently? Ooh. We let these falsehoods stand as truth and don't correct them, then we're just muddying the waters. So there could be no justice through Todd Chrisley or anybody else. According to the police report, the children were found at the nearest intersection. It's pretty far from the house, but might still be Duggar property. KJ says Jim Bob is claiming to be anointed by God. Curious he is. But as I said yesterday, that is not rare in his world. In his world, the IBLP teaches that men are the anointing holders of God, that they are prophets. You look at the umbrella graph they have, it is God, man, wife, children. So the wife only has authority over the children, only in the most limited fashion. It's not anything that you would want at all. And so you end up with these little petty tin-plated dictator guys like Jim Bob Duggar that think that they're better than everybody else. The IFB teaches that everybody in the IFB, all the men, are greater than everybody else, that even the children are greater than anybody else's children. Only IFB, oh God, this is not going to be a good day. Somebody's already burning things outside. So they teach this thing that they're better than everybody else, that they're far superior. It's actually in their theology. Tomorrow I want to talk about the theology of where they think women are, because they picked up this ancient Jewish rabbi's words, the midrash, as I was saying yesterday. And I thought that's what I was going to talk about today. I was going to go into more detail about the midrash because I mentioned it yesterday without going into much detail. And those poor kids born into it don't know any difference until they escape. Exactly. Okay. I don't know exactly why the Duggars and the Bates fell out. I'm sure it had to do with power. One patriarch not bowing to the other, or something like that, because that's how a lot of these little petty dictator quiverful happenings happen. And that's one of the things that I'm angry at KJ about, pretending she knows all of this like she's some big expert. 2 years ago, she barely knew who the Duggars were, and she didn't know what the IBLP was. She'd make all kinds of mistakes. She's still making mistakes, but now she's claiming she's an expert. If Jim Bob is anointed, it is by evil. Prairie, I kind of have to agree with you. But then again, I'm not a fan of IBLP because, like I said, they're pulling theology from crazy places, like an ancient rabbinical teaching, and things that don't have a damn thing to do with Jesus, the New Testament, the Bible, any of that. They're just adding, they're making, I don't know how many of you have seen the Book of Mormon, but there's this really funny song in it called Making Things Up Again, Arnold, because he's making up all this ridiculous crap and telling these Africans. Like, that's when he came up with the magical F frog to cure their AIDS and things like that. So the song was, "You're making it up again, Arnold." So these guys, when they start this nonsense, my mind always goes back to, "You're making things up again, Arnold," because it's just pretty ridiculous that they're even going into these places, these emotional places, because it's just not done. They're going into these weird places that don't have a biblical basis, and they're making it the law. They're legalistic. If you don't know what legalism is, look it up. It's an eye-opening thing. So if Jim Bob thinks he's anointed, that's because that's what the IBLP and Bill Gothard teach. So she's right about that. I will give her that. She's sort of right about that. But this morning I got up and Reddit had a user on there that had written a thing about KJ, somebody who was a uncensored Fundie Snark, usually person, who said that they'd had a run-in with KJ 6 years before. And KJ said she was a reporter who wanted to interview her, and that this woman was lying about having been raised by the IBLP. Anyway, this happened on Facebook. This does sound like KJ. I'm just going to come right out and say, but I don't think, there's no way in hell this happened in the time frame that this person is trying to say it happened in. Wouldn't a prophet know their son was heading to federal prison for CP? Maybe, maybe not. If you heard some of the prophecy BS that they throw around in the quiverful cults, one of the things they say is never give negative prophecy. Never, 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 never. Even if you know it to be a fact, never give negative. It's always got to be uplifting. Uplifting. But it's not always. The IBLP isn't causing the Duggars issues. It's just helping them rationalize them. Exactly, Laura. There are plenty of decent people in the IBLP and plenty that are just naturally manipulative and controlling. I think it attracts people who are manipulative and controlling. I've known more people that were that way than that were decent. But there are some decent people in there, I will say that. Her interpretation of the scripture Jeremy and Jinger posted, she confused me about it. I haven't even looked at that yet, Kira. I will eventually. I read Jeremy and Ginger's response to the whole thing with Josh, and I saw red. Why did I see red? First of all, they distanced themselves quite a bit, and they seem to be quite the fame, you know what's, in LA. So I'm just laughing reading their statement from this, you know, from the let's edge as far away and say as many silly biblical things as we can. Yep. So she really did that. She really just started throwing this crap out there. Like a stone on the neck. Yeah. So this person that was saying this about KJ was saying that it happened 6 years ago. There is no way on earth. KJ didn't even start writing for Pathos until like late 2018, early 2019. Doesn't even put it in the same time frame. And she wasn't even blogging about religion in those days. Certainly not the IBLP. She only started covering the IBLP within the last 18 months or so. She has stalked Facebook groups. That is true. For her information, for her blog. But she was only in those times, she was only stalking the anti-vax community, the pro-vax community, the free birth community, things like that. Not a thing to do with the Duggars or religion or anything. So there's that. She wasn't even covering those things. And she stopped doing it eventually until the Sophie Long case came along. And then she started trolling Facebook again. Jilly Juice. Yes, Jilly Juice was a big one of hers. I remember that the lady Jilly that does the juice was suing her in small claims court over it because she was absolutely freaking out over that when it happened. Because her and I were friends then, and we talked a lot on Facebook Messenger. She only started calling her. Here's another thing that I keep running into again and again and again and again. I've run into this in the KJ truther community. She only started calling herself a reporter or a journalist towards the end of 2019. Why? Because Pathos insisted that all of us stop calling ourselves bloggers, which we'd all done before, and start calling ourselves more professional names. I chose daily columnist because I was writing every single day. Other people said opinion writer. There are various things. KJ seized upon it and told me, oh, I'm going to call myself a reporter. And I said, whatever works for you, thinking, somebody would eat her alive. I grew up in the IBLP, and prophets tend to prophesize things to push their own agenda. Exactly, Nitwith. They do. They do. It's always calculated. Now, I've heard some really strange prophecies through the years. And I've seen my old pastor just shut those people down. Cue up the worship team and start singing, our God is an awesome God, and just roll right over the top of that. And I laughed because when I saw the Righteous Gemstones, they did that in one episode, and I just laughed because that's what they do. So she started calling herself a reporter in late 2019. And it's because of Pathos. And I should have stopped her at the time. I should have said, are you high? You don't have a reporter's credentials. You've never worked for a newspaper. You've never worked for a publication. How can you call yourself a reporter? She didn't even know who the Duggars were until towards the end of her time at Pathos. She used to try and pick my brain about them on Facebook Messenger after she discovered that using the word Duggar always ended up giving you huge, huge hits on Facebook. And Pathos, and later on YouTube when she started doing the YouTubey things. She was a contractor for independent contractor for Pathos, same as I was. So anytime she tries to claim herself as working for them, not quite. She was an independent contractor. We all were. And it was only like 2018, 2019. It was a very short period of time. I've seen very few people come on to Pathos and crash and burn that quickly. Okay, and I write the same thing over and over again. Like I said, she only started covering the Duggars on the IBLP towards the end of 2019, not before. She never covered religion. She was listed under the Pathos non-religious sector, like I was with No Longer Quivering. She was hired to cover caring for a child with chronic illnesses while not having a religion, having no faith, being an atheist. During her time at Pathos, she did troll Facebook groups, like I said before. She really, trolled them hard. But it was mostly the free birth community and the anti-vax community. She started a lot of groups, and she added me as a mod, and I was just quietly joining myself because of the fact that I'm a busy person. Even to this day, I have lots of things going on. I just don't have that much time for all of this, as she was trying to put it. Most of her info does come from Reddit or Free Jinger or British tabloids. Like I said, even her thing on Jana had already been posted to the British tabloids. I went back and did timestamps of everything and took a look. It was. Okay, and so this is why we must be accurate when we're speaking about her or the Duggars, and why when I was working at Pathos, I only promoted those things that Duggar said that I could get some kind of independent verification on. I marked anything a rumor that I used that was actually a rumor. I try to do that here. Yesterday I shared, hey, some information that somebody claiming to be claiming to be Josh Duggar's bodyguard said that a child was airlifted to Texas to go to the ER in 2015. That's possible. And I have to say something about that too, because I've been getting tons of messages saying, well, you could look up the flight plan. Here's the thing. When the Duggars started getting really famous, like 2014, 15, because of this problems with Josh, the first problem was one of the first things they did was make all of their airplanes data private on FlightAware and all the other flight sites. Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but if you can get the call numbers of an airplane on not just FlightAware, but a bunch of sites, you can pop in that call number and pull up a list of every place that plane has been, all the flight plans, all the flights they took, all of that. But the thing is, if you pay, you can make all of that information just go away to be completely private to anybody, not you or somebody you've authorized. The Duggars did do that. I can't remember if it was late 2014 or early 2015. But when it happened, it was like a big kick in the teeth, because before that, Jim Bob Duggar would say something like, oh, blah, 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 we weren't there. And you could pull up the flight and see that they'd flown there. And because they had several airplanes, the last count, I think it was 3, I think they had, before they went ahead and made all of the information private. So you can't see it now. So for everybody saying that you will be able to verify this bodyguard, I'm going to say BS. That's not happening. Not happening at all. And Without a Box of Kleenex is the master of disinformation, almost on the same level as Jim Bob Duggar himself. Because how many times have we seen Jim Bob say I have half truth in order to cover something that Josh has done? Remember when the business got raided and Jim Bob Duggar was putting out a statement saying, no law enforcement has been to the house. Well, sucker, I got a picture, a photograph someone sent me of law enforcement vehicle at your house in that time frame. Did they search? Probably not, because Jim Bob Duggar follows the homeschool legal defense people. And he just says no, unless they show up with a warrant. No going in the Duggar place. So I'm suggesting that we just take everything she's saying with an enormous grain of salt. When people start saying crap they don't know anything about, maybe just turn a blind ear. I am over the Duggar lies too, Prairie. In fact, I don't want to hear about Duggar for quite some time. What happens when things like this happen, like when Josh gets arrested, or there's all this stuff about Josh going to jail? You know what happens for me? I have people showing up in all of my social medias crying on my shoulder, traumatized people who are hurt. And I will never turn anyone away like that. I will talk to people. I may not have the most time to do it, but I will always stop and talk to those people and let them process their trauma. Because that's one of the things about these types of high demand religious organizations. I'm not going to use the C word, because I don't think the C word actually fits them. And I'm going to have to do a sit down and look at the bite model and run Jim Bob Duggar's IBLP theology against that. Cindy Kunzman has that at her website, undermuchgrace.blogspot.com. She's got a ton. Cindy is so intellectual, it just scares me. She's that way. But so many traumatized people who are so hurt by this organization reach out to me. And when these public things happen, they reach out a lot more. And I will always talk to them, like I said. at least as much as I can without losing my mind, because this week has really been hard for myself as well, having been living a organization like that. Our pastor used to use the example in the Bible of Rahab the harlot and how she lied to hide the spies. He would say that it's a biblical reason to lie from the ungodly. Nitwit, I've heard that one too. I've also heard that if you're lying to the ungodly, it's not a lie. Personally, I think a lie is a lie is a lie is a lie. Now, are there justifications sometimes? Well, you tell me. I mean, what if a man's wife says, "Does this make me look fat?" And she's like 300 or 400 pounds. And there's no not looking fat about it. Shit, she can weigh as little as, know as much as I do, and ask the husband that. I know better. But ask the husband, "Does this make me look fat?" What's the husband supposed to say? Everything makes you look fat? No, the kindest thing is to say, "No, it looks good on you." Even though it may not be the 100% truth, it's the truth that you have to get where you're going. It's one of those little white lies. And I think there's some acceptability for that, because you don't want to hurt anybody else's feelings over something dumb. Something won't matter far in the whirlwind, but they're going to obsess about for ages afterwards. Where can we maybe have questions emailed to you that maybe we don't think should be in chat live? Kira, you can always email me. I do have a public email box. I'm not the best about checking it. I'll admit that. It's Suzanne, SUZANNE .CALULU.com. Suzanne.kalulu@gmail.com. I'm sorry. My brain is fried today. Allergy pills. It's allergies. My allergies are going nuts this morning. I ate scrambled egg over cauliflower hash with a little tiny bit of cheese, and I'm sneezing, and I don't even know which one of those things it was. So that is what it is. That's why I think we have to be so accurate in what we're saying about her, because we're going into these lawsuits. And I think that muddying the waters about her is probably not a good idea. I think that everything that went down with the Tati Westbrook lawsuit, I think there were a lot of things that happened that were said that really turned that into just a total S show. It just did. And that's the same thing. I mean, they just have to put that shit down. Oh, and I'm hoping that this is the last time for another stretch and I don't have to talk about her. So I'm vomiting all this out now because, as I was saying earlier, I myself have been triggered by everything that's been happening with Josh. And just upset because I know damn good and well if Jim Bob Duggar and Michelle had tried to get him legitimate psychological counseling for sexual issues as a teen, we likely would not be where we are now. And even though I'm angry at all the twaddle that Jim Bob Duggar is saying and doing that is just so totally against anything that is helpful or useful or anything else, I still have pity for the family. And that's another reason why I'm not going to say much about the Duggars anymore. I'm going back to talking about them as little as possible, because this is a family that's got to grieve the loss of their son. Even if what he did was so heinous, you're still gonna grieve that. I would not want to be in Michelle Duggar's shoes right now, losing a favored son like that. Even for things that he did himself, it's still going to be painful. I'm watching the statements coming out from the brothers and sisters, and they're revealing. I think the only one that I've liked so far has been the one given out by Jill and Derek, of all things. And I used to think Derek was ridiculous, but now I think he's got a little more going on than I ever gave him credit for. The one by Jinger and her husband, Jeremy, was just extremely self-serving and fame whoring. So that one was not a good one. I'm starting to still process some of the other ones, reading through them, because like I said, This is all so very difficult if you've lived this. If you haven't lived this and you're a trauma vulture, this is your life's blood, and you're going to just lap it up. You're going to talk about it all the time. You're going to make video after video after video with very little substance, but a whole lot of BS. I think that's where we are with her right now. And we have to ignore all the crap she's saying because none of it makes any kind of decipherable sense. I mean, the other day she made a mistake where she said that Gil Bates was the founder of IBLP, and she corrected herself pretty quickly. But that's still a pretty big error to make for somebody who claims to be an expert in this particular field. Agree the comment put out by Jill and Derek was so well worded and thoughtful. It really was. Always grateful. I find myself liking him and Jill a whole lot more. I'm not saying they don't have some squishy theology because they're still going to an IFB church. But I am thankful seeing Jill breaking away from all of this. Online church, Kira, we may have to do that. Yes, Suzanne, I'm talking about KJ. I always like to call her without a box of Kleenex because I don't like to summon her, because if you say KJ, KJ, KJ 3 times, she may pop up. And yesterday I kind of laughed because one of the reveals that they were doing on Reddit that I laughed over was she had showed a copy of the things she saved, all the photos. And there was an Aaron file. There was a Tina file. There was a setting up Todd Chrisley file, almost in Todd Bentley, who is somebody I used to follow back in the old days, way before he started having affairs and doing squishy things. Some of these guys in these power positions end up being undone by their peckers. And I don't get that. You don't see too many women that are having all these in these religious cults. I said the C word. Oh my goodness. These high demand religious organizations falling prey to sexual weirdness. You just don't. I don't know why that is. Did you read the Darren? I did. Yes, I read Michelle and Jim Bob Duggar's statement, and it completely glosses over the fact that they were real victims and all the things that he's done. And there were. Is Jessica Duggar still tight with the family? I like to watch her videos now and then because her kids are so cute and seem sweet. I think she's actually pretty close to them still, but I don't know if she is going to stay that way, because she did show up at the trial one day and got to hear that the things that were said by her people, or said by her parents about what happened to her, are very different than what actually happened. Todd Bentley was batshit from the get-go. Yeah, your spidey senses were tingling. Perry, I loved his soaking videos, his soaking CDs. I loved him doing all that weird music and calling out scriptures and talking about pickles and various things. I loved that. I was really into that. Now I'm looking back and going, that was kind of crazy, wasn't it? Why was I doing that? Why? They mentioned no trauma to anyone, none. And that's the thing that's scaring me about how everyone's covering this, is there was so much trauma done to those girls. If I'm having to talk to people left and right, they're having tremendous trauma that's coming out from this thing, then those girls who are actual victims are dealing with, just untold amounts of trauma. And I want to see them get healed. I want to see everybody. That is my wish, that everyone who's suffering from this terrible trauma gets some kind of relief from it. Myself and everybody else. I kind of liken it to climbing a staircase or peeling an onion. You'll get there eventually, but it may take you a few times. You may go down a step or two and then go back up. It just, recovering from this stuff is just hard because it's so wicked and so pervasive. And so many in the church pretend it's the genuine thing, that you're supposed to smile, forgive the person who traumatized you, and move on like it never happened. That is never helpful for a victim. Joy and Austin, I think they probably are halfway out, and I've had them added to my prayer list now ever since seeing them at the trial. I think that Joy is probably crushed, and Austin is probably dealing with quite a bit of crap too from this, because they're both hearing for the first time the reality of what happened from Bobby Holt. It's awful. Hey, Mandy, it's just wicked and awful. And I can't emphasize yet again how deeply this stuff destroys your soul. There's a movie that I had the chance to see before it came out in theaters and to write a review for Pathos. It was called Spotlight. I would recommend any victim of that kind of thing to watch it. It's about the Catholic priests in Boston who are molesting children. But here's the good news is that I watched it and I felt it's like the Josh Duggar thing. It's you see that there can be justice for victims. And it's awful to watch, but at the same time, it kind of makes you feel like, oh, there's hope. There's hope. Because being the victim of physical, spiritual, sexual abuse, it's soul killing. It really is. She actually said it is harmful and doesn't allow a survivor to heal. Credit for saying survivors have zero obligation to forgive an abuser. Yes, I will give that credit to Susanna Anderson, who's not entirely awful, just like 85% awful. It does not allow you to heal if you do that. If you're forced to forgive and hang around with the person that abused you, your healing will be delayed or completely derailed. And the realization your own parents lied about it has got to hurt. That's got to be the most awful thing about the whole thing to me, is some of these kids are finding out through this trial what happened to them. I lived through Anna's dilemma on a larger scale, bigger scale minus religion. My ex-husband was in prison for involvement with my daughter, age 19 to 13 years old. My entire church community and town really came. Oh, Kira, that is after me telling me I did have my kids removed. Kira, that's a tough one. We had a situation like that in my old church. And I'm thankful to say very few people did that to this woman. Mostly we just tried to be understanding. And eventually the pastor said, you have to leave this guy. You have to divorce him. He's in jail now. You must do this in order for your own healing. I didn't know because I was deeply abused too, but I left town and God for a long, long time. Kira, that happens. That happens. That's the sad thing about this. The very time that you would think your church family would be understanding and support you, they come after you. I've experienced that I've experienced that hardcore myself. I didn't know because I was abused. That's the key right there. You did not know. And that's why I have some compassion for Anna, because she doesn't know she's abused yet. But eventually, I think that's going to dawn on her. And I hope her brother Daniel means what he says about helping her out of her dilemma. Because if he does, it'll go a long way. Here's what I predict is going to happen. Dumb question. Seems everybody knows this already but me. But was Joanna a victim of Josh too and didn't know? Christoph Van, Joanna knew that Josh had touched her. She didn't know the extent. She was lied to about what it was. She was told it was once. It was once, and it was much more minor. I don't want to go into what he did to her, but let's just say it was pretty awful. And she was told that it was not such a bad thing. He did it once. Turned out he did it repeatedly. He did awful things to her and the others. I don't think we're seeing the only victims of him. I think that there are going to be a lot of other ones pop out here. We're going to hear, and it's going to be awful. Joy, Anna had no idea that was the trauma that was done to her until she heard it in court, because her parents had lied to her about it. And when somebody who is as fundamental as your parents, that your whole world revolves around, lies to you like that, it can be soul destroying. KJ was coming hard for Anna, broke my heart. Same thing here. I think that we need to be supportive of her, at least until we know exactly what's going on. Austin's eyes were very red when he came out of court. To me, he looked like he'd been crying. Felt so sorry for him. Hearing what Josh did to Joy must have been so traumatic. I'm sure it was. Kira, that's not surprising. A lot of these guys end up in leadership positions all over the place. And when it comes out what they've done, it's just heartless. And people will actually defend them over you sometimes. I hope Derek and Jill can help her too. Joy was the 5-year-old. Yes, Kira. I pray the jury gets counseling. Marlene, they may need it after all of this, after seeing those things. During Bible time, yes, that was the most disgusting part of what Josh did to Joyanna. It happened when there was Bible reading time. Yeah, Laura, that's really not good. Austin does seem like a decent guy, Ashley, and I think he's going to be a stand-up guy in the long run, even though I don't agree with him about the pearls. I think the pearls are awful. Counseling is available to the jurors. I'm glad to hear that, because I haven't really kept up with all that. My days have been taken up since the trial began with talking to survivors of these awful things, people who are going through trauma. Kira, I'm glad you feel that way. And that is my whole goal here. I want to educate. Part of the problem with these kind of places is that they hide what it is they're actually doing, what it is they actually believe. And that's another reason for doing stuff like talking about the Midrash thing with how they view women, because it's insidious and gross, and it creates more victims. If your theology has a body count, you might want to rethink it. You just might want to rethink it. And this is something I've walked through with having to leave my old church. Somebody asked me this morning in comments if I was submissive during my years, because I'm not so submissive now. I have an opinion. And I just had to tell them, we tried. My husband and I, we tried that. I tried being submissive. He tried stepping up and being the leader and everything. And guess what? It did not work for us. Neither one of us are wired that way. And we tried for some years to live the way that they wanted us to live at our old church, and it just never worked. It was always a hassle. And I think, one of the things that we struggled with since my mast cell diagnosis and this last stroke is that I'm requiring my husband to step in and do more and more stuff. And he's doing it, but I have to keep reminding him, because we set this dangerous precedent back in those days that he was working in DC and going back and forth, and I did everything else. Well, I did a lot of things. Took the trash out. I took the cars for repair. I did so many things that I don't do now. I just do not do. Oh, thank you so much, Julie. Thank you. My yarn fund loves that. I'm getting ready to go buy yarn in a few minutes, actually. I'm sneaking out. I got to tell you guys that we have a yarn store in Tamarindo. It's not the best stuff in the world, but I drew up a pattern for a fish purse I'm going to make, and I need yarn. I need yarn badly, so I'm getting ready to make a yarn run because I don't have those colors, and you could never have too much. I can relate with Joy. I was sad at 2. My mom told me at 40 while watching Oprah, a lot of things started to make sense then. Hermie's mom, at least you found out. I couldn't admit for many years that I'd been molested. And it finally came out. Oh, thank you, Laura S. More yarn money. I'm getting ready to go buy a ton. I couldn't tell anybody for a long time, and it came out during a Lance Wallnau conference of all things. Lance started praying specifically for that and a couple other things to come out in people. And I found myself on the ground, on all fours, just almost vomiting before I had to admit that this is what happened to me from 7 to 9. And my mother would drug me. She didn't know. I'm going to say that. She just thought I was afraid of the dentist. She had no idea I was being molested by the dentist. So just give me a little half of a Xanax and send me on my way, and I would come back, and it would just be awful. When I was dying, she finally picked up on the fact that it was not just dental care, it was something else going on, and she took me out. That Observe channel did a really good look at Jim Bob. I've got to look at that. You know, some years back, I don't know if it was 2014 or 15, I met the Duggars at a book signing. It was when the Daughter's book came out. And I went and bought a pile of copies and had them signed, sold them all on eBay, except for one copy that I just horrifyingly read through. And standing there in front of Jim Bob, watching how him and Michelle interact, and that Michelle is actually calling the shots, and he keeps looking to her for approval, tells me that maybe their marriage is not as submissive as they're trying to pretend. So many times women I've known who drag the family into quiverful are the ones calling the shots, and they're pretending to be submissive. There's one particular woman I'm thinking of right now. I'm not going to say her name, but she has a supporter that's just completely out of the box. And every time you mention her name, the supporter goes nuts. So let me just say, she wrote a book called The Power of the Transformed Wife. And I think that she, Julie, I've not seen anything to indicate that Jim did anything to those kids in that manner. I've seen nothing. I'm not ruling it out. I'm just saying I haven't seen any evidence of that. I haven't heard any talk. Nobody's gossiped about that. I haven't gotten any messages about that. So I'm thinking, I don't know. It's always possible. But here's what we need to keep in mind going forward with all this crapola is that the CPS will likely be involved in this family's life for a long time. Josh being put in prison opens the door to CPS getting a court order and going in and talking to Anna and Josh's children and any minor children on the compound. Homeschool legal defense people won't be able to stop it. It will happen. If it has to happen with the cops showing up to enforce it, it will. And that's pretty sad, but that's really going to be the only way to even start to see what was going on, because as you saw with the trial, Austin and Joanna had no idea. So if the kids in the family think that this is just a one-of, and it comes out that it was not just a one-of and how terrible it was, I think we're going to start to see more and more stuff happen. I mean, we got this bodyguard that's claiming that a kid was flown to Texas to receive medical treatment. How true that is, I don't know. I think that, I can't remember if that came off of, somebody told me it was at Free Ginger, but I also saw it on on the Twitter page of somebody that is a reporter for one of the Arkansas outlets. So I've seen it 2 or 3 different places. There's just no telling. Yes, she does, Kira. She does. And she's a mean little lady, isn't she? If she can find a way to blame a woman, she will. She's supported by the most awful, awful, awful men. But she did have a falling out with biblical gender roles that really made me laugh, because for a long time she was a fan of his and he was a fan of hers. And then he started going off in his sexuality stuff, talking about biblicalgenderroles.com, talking about he thought that polygamy was the way it should be. And he's got all kinds of weird theories about sex in the Bible that aren't even really supported by the Bible. Girl Defined. I don't know about Girl Defined. I have not had a lot of interaction with him. Cindy is not on YouTube. Cindy, I'm going to put the link to her blog in the description. She's a real close friend of mine. We actually met because of NLQ, what I was doing and what she was doing under much grace. And we just kind of hit it off. We said we were sisters and we were, sisters under the skin. We had very similar experiences with our religion. We had very similar experiences growing up as far as things that happened to us, different things. And Cindy has really been shaken up by the whole Josh Duggar thing. We had a conversation one day where she was just in tears. She was just destroyed and weeping over a lot of the testimony. And she's a good person. Unlike me, she's very intellectual. She can break down all this. She can tell you where the scripture is. She can tell you where it came from. She can tell you which edition of the Bible was edited to push this or that. Her brain just amazes me. She is brilliantly smart. She was a registered nurse for a long time. So she's a smart lady and a lot of fun to hang out with. Her and I went one time in Florida when I was there to the drag queen bar to watch all the drag queens do their thing and drink tequila. And we had the best time. And it was the ultimate in recovery from this nonsense, because it's like, I think I actually turned to her that night and said, you know what would happen if our ex-pastors could see us now? We'd be told we'd be going straight to hell. So she's something else. I love her to death. I love her dearly. There are very few people that I'm that close to, but Cindy is one of them. And Cindy is the only person besides Reva and a couple of my other friends that have my permission to call me 24/7. Most of the time when I get those calls in the middle of the night, I'm looking at my phone grumbling, going, who is this? Particularly here where I have to pay 2 cents a minute to use my Skype. So that's all I really wanted to say. I wanted to say, just be real careful about who you believe in all this nonsense. Always ask questions. That's one thing that the IBLP and a lot of these high demand religious organizations hate. They hate when women ask questions. They don't like it. They will tell you you're being sinful by asking questions, which is interesting because if you look at the ministry of Jesus, Jesus asked questions. That was his main technique for shutting people down who were saying things that weren't of him, or weren't of God, I should say. It was a technique that I had to use in my own deconversion when I would run across people in my tiny Virginia town that would say, I heard that you were an apostate now. Say, who told you that? So-and-so. Well, I wonder why they'd say something like that. Because blah, blah, blah. I said, do you really think that's true? So I would run them in a circle with these questions until finally they just shut up. Because I knew that anything I said was going to just trigger this whole, Suzanne said X, Y, and Z, and it was going to go around the town. Why? Because the church I went to was a gossip factory. There are many times when I was on the healing team that I had various people approach me and say, why are you praying for so-and-so? I says, you need to ask so-and-so because I'm really not at liberty to tell you that. Stupid stuff. Like one time I had Franny, this remains secretive because Jim Bob Duggar made it remain secretive. That's why. He does have some juice in that town and he's got money. So anyway, back to the rumors and what would happen at our church. One time I had a really bad reaction to a lipstick. I think it was one of those lip venom kind of kits. I put it on and my lips just swelled up huge. And I don't mean like Kylie Jenner huge. I mean like cartoonish huge. Like those old cartoons from the 30s of African Americans huge. Like Pillow huge. Like 3 times Angelina Jolie huge. It was an allergic reaction, and I get weird allergic reactions. That's just how my body works. So I had to run to the post office that day. So I got up, got dressed, put on my makeup, put on a little bit of lip gloss I knew I was not allergic to, and went off. I ran into somebody from our church when I was doing this. And before the day was out, I had people calling me wanting to know why I had had lip fillers injected. No such thing. I had an allergic reaction to a new lipstick brand. That was all it was. It was a minor thing. I wish the Duggar shut Box of Rocks down. I've seen clips messing up what she said. I can't even with her. Jilly, I'm the same way. I won't even watch her. People will send me clips and I'll watch it and go, what the hell? That's my most common response, particularly stuff like where she bobbled who Gil Bates was. I think we're seeing the fall of an empire. I believe so. And I think we should just sit back and watch, because there's not much we can do besides help those that are leaving, that approach us, that want help. And they have to get to a pretty good place before they can do that. ED or Fundie light. Yeah, it's kind of what I figured. Godly modesty, purity, ministry geared towards teens. Yes. I've read about them a couple of times at NLQ, but not in any depth, because I could see that their whole audience was teenagers. NLQ was not geared towards second gen or teenagers or anything. It was mostly geared towards mothers who had been dealing with the effects of Quiverful. That was my core audience. That's who I was writing for. I was not writing for teenagers. But I will laugh. One time, Girl Defined got a hold of either an article or an interview with Vicki Garrison, who was the original founder of NLQ, before I took over, and they were just ripping her up and down and making fun of her. So I answered them. And it wasn't pretty or pleasant, and they shut up about us. Why is Jana watching Mary Ellen? Where was Anna, her mother? Why is Jana stuck in that house caring for a gaggle of other people's children? Because that's what they've always done. I don't know if you remember the original Duggar specials, when Michelle explained about the buddy system, and the 4 eldest girls just had massive responsibilities. Each one of them had a baby, a toddler, and a pre-K age child they were taking care of. Jana's like the only adult daughter left, so she's getting swacked with all of this. And we know that Anna was spending days at the Reber's house. So she's farming those kids out somewhere. I'm not surprised that Jana has them. I'm just not. So do we know why Jana was charged? I missed the beginning of your stream. Yes, we do. She was charged because a child or children were found in the street, maybe even as far away as the intersection with another road from their house. And someone called the police, and the police came and CPS came. Now, the rumor was that whoever it was had fallen asleep while caring for these children. The children escaped. The Duggars have denied that. They've said, no, she did not fall asleep. And it could be any number of scenarios. If I had a quarter for every time my kids did something crazy while I was in the bathroom, I would at least have enough to buy a truckload of yarn right now. You turn your back for a half a second and they are gone. I grabbed my son one time and my daughter for doing this, where we were in a parking lot. I got them down, and before I could turn around and grab their hand, they were gone. One time it happened in a busy street. Another time it happened in a wall-to-wall busy parking lot. And it's just those scary things. They happen. And they do happen. And sometimes CPS gets called and you have to explain what happened. I've only had one real CPS investigation of myself, and it was a silly one. It was when I was in the military. My son was like 4 months old. I dropped him, and it was the dumbest thing of all times. I reached over to tickle my other daughter, and I was holding him like this, and I reached over to tickle, and he flopped over onto the carpeting about 2 feet away. And of course, being the nervous new mother I was like, oh my God. I took him to the hospital. There was nothing wrong with him. He wasn't even bruised. But that automatically generated a report with the command with the military for an investigation. It was kind of funny because the people who did the investigation all knew me and all laughed and said, there's no way you abused this child. There's just no way. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to have CPS called on you. There are some circumstances where you're going to flub up. I mean, none of us are perfect. I certainly am not. I make mistakes all the time. I don't know about you guys, but I do it all the time. I wish I was perfect. I wish I didn't make mistakes. I wish. But I can't even keep my brain remembering stuff half the time. Earlier, my husband was talking about zip lining because we're having a friend visit soon. And he kept saying, you know, that thing where they get on the thing and they do the thing. And I'm like, I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember the name. Neither one of us could for like 10 minutes. It's like we're going senile. We're having senioritis moments. So everybody makes mistakes at every stage of their life. It just is. Yeah. Right on over. Yep, he flipped right on over. Prairie, that's a good way to do it. Britta Lee, I agree. Children should not be taking care of children. At least not for a few minutes. Like, here, take the baby. I got to go pee. I mean, really. I can see that. I can't see leaving the whole kit and caboodle with another child and saying, hey, it's now your responsibility to change diapers, feed bottles, do this, X, Y, and Z. My toddler tried to slope 5 times in line at the store. Oh, yeah. Elope, yeah. Toddlers will take off. That's just their nature. I don't know why. Ultimately, we're all on the same team. You're exactly right. And social workers are not looking to pick up your child. They're kind of hoping that this is something that they don't have to pick up your child. Foster care system is overwhelmed. The group homes are overwhelmed. They're overrun. I mean, I worked at a residential treatment center that was overrun. There's just not very many places to put you. Go to dialysis, Kira. Be well. Be as well as you can be. I'm getting ready to wrap it up anyway. My daughter, 9 point. No, it's the best time to do naughty things is when I'm washing dishes. Because the way my home is set up, oh, wow. Yeah. I always like, it's quiet. What's going on here? I was always that way. And chat. Things just don't slow down, do they? No, they don't, Gingerly. There is always something going on. Yes. And go ahead and email me anytime, Kira. I'll be looking for your email. My mom was on dialysis for about a decade. Oh, Prairie, so you know, I had a real good friend that was on dialysis. Hey, Amy, I guess it didn't warn you until I'd been online for quite some time. So that's the thing. Whether Jana was at fault or not, we're going to have to just wait for the trial. Like I said, I'm not even sure that she wasn't doing something like sitting on the toilet and off they went, because that happens too. So, I mean, it's a reality, and CPS does have to investigate these things and rule them out. And most of the time they do rule things out. Side note, has anyone ever seen My Motivation? I need to clean the living room and put up the tree. These halls need debt. Prairie, I don't feel so bad. I just put up my tree the other day, and I've had the ornaments and stuff sitting out forever. And I just even started first little baby steps towards baking cookies. Normally, in my old Fundie Town days, the halls have been decked. I would have had like 30 different kinds of cookies baked. It would have been go, driving myself to do stuff. And I think that's why I have issues with fatigue now, because I just ran out of it. I'm way behind, but Suzanne, flight logs are privatized. Okay. No, Diash, I remember when they privatized their flight logs, because I was using the flight logs to determine how much BS certain stories were, like when they went and picked up, I can't even remember the fundamentalist minister, but it was one that went to jail, and when he came out, Jim Bob Duggar was there with his plane to pick this dude up from jail to bring him wherever he was going. Is it typical to get arrested? I don't think it's typical to get arrested for these things. A lot of times with these type things, CPS will recommend like parenting classes or something else. It has to be pretty egregious to get an arrest. So that's why I'm curious to see what the actual reports say and what the social workers reports say on what happened. My Aunt Reva, as old as 6, she says she left to get married when she was 15 because she was going to end up taking care of those babies. They were going to be her own, not her siblings. Had her first kid at 17. Where were they? I don't know. That's kind of the other grand question. We know damn good and well that Michelle is checked out emotionally in her own way, it seems. And I'm just going to say it. There's so much abuse that goes on in the IBLP type situations that women and children sometimes will go into like a fugue state where they just don't take anything in. They lose chunks of time. And I'm losing the other word that we call that disassociation. She got a ticket citation, yes, but she had to pay almost $400 in bail. So that was more than just a ticket and citation. She is dissociative, I think, which makes me wonder what happened to her because she wasn't always like that. Maybe she's having fantasies all day long about dancing with Jesus. Oh, it is supposed to be for that. I would normally have done that myself before Thanksgiving living here, but I just can't even be bothered. I don't know why. Maybe when I'm getting here, it's hot, so I don't feel in the Christmas spirit at all, ever. But I did finally put up my tree. Remember, I was saying that there were a lot of things that my husband now has to do that he's never had to do before. I had to have him string lights in the very top of the Christmas tree and hang the balls there because I couldn't reach it. And because of the stroke and my wobbliness, I am not ready to climb a ladder anymore. And in the past, I would have whipped out that little ladder. I would have climbed it. I would have done all that. No, this time I had to say, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. My heart hurts for this woman, for the women. Yeah, I agree. Mine does too. Is this why she may not be gone to court, Michelle? I don't know. I think that Michelle didn't go to court because Michelle couldn't stand to hear these things said about her baby. I think it's a matter of it would just been too heart destroying. And I can't 100% fault her for that. I wouldn't want to go to court if my kids were accused of something like that. I don't know anybody who would, but I'm one of those, I must see what evidence they have. I would have probably gone, but that's me. It's okay to ask for help. Yeah, you're right. And a lot of us will come out of Quiverful don't feel that way. We come out with this superwoman thing where we're supposed to do everything. We're never supposed to bug a man for anything, even though the man is supposed to be the servant leader, blah, blah, blah. It just creates weak men and exhausted women. That's exactly right. When was the last time Michelle was actually seen in public? No idea. I'm not sure. She may have been ill. We don't know. There's just so much that is hidden because Jim Bob is such a control freak about everything that we just never know. You just never know what's going on with them. And that's kind of sad. And that's one of the reasons why at No Longer Quivering in It Here, I've been so incredibly open about myself because I think that when you hide things and when you excuse things and you try to control the universe, you're really making it hard for everybody, not just yourself. And there's Cindy, so I'm going to need to go. Okay, you guys, thanks for joining me. Thanks for listening to my rant because I was just so mad this morning when I got up and saw somebody making claims that I knew there was no way in hell. I got to have a tissue. There was no way in hell were true. That somebody had fudged the timelines. I just had to say those things. Love you guys. Have a great day. Try to stay well. Try not to feel overwhelmed and pressured in this season. I think tomorrow Monday, I'm going to do something on how to survive the Christmas season as a spoonie, because there are definitely different tricks that you can use. Goodbye, everybody. Okay, and I don't know how to work this stupid thing.